don't need rap money. Rap money. I got a story that's unfavorable.
His brother was murdered, and he says his family was threatened by the killer.
But right now, Willie Slater Jr. is the one behind bars.
Deputies say when they arrived, they found Willie Slater Jr. dead.
A quiet back road in the rural community of Christmas, Florida was shattered by gunfire just after midnight on April 9th, 2022.
The first 5 shots, I'm telling you, and then a space, and then I'm like, wow.
Under the faint glow of a streetlight on St. Nicholas Avenue, Willie Lee Slater Jr., 44, lay bleeding beside a small house, mortally wounded by a burst of bullets. At 1 a.m., responding Orange County deputies found Slater's body, pronouncing him dead at the scene. Nearby, a young woman with gunshot wounds was discovered in a car at a gas station on East Colonial Drive and rushed to the hospital in stable condition. The 2 shootings unfolded within minutes of each other, leaving one dead and one injured. Long before that fatal night, Willie Slater Jr. was to those that knew him, a larger-than-life personality, quick with a story, often starring himself. A charismatic young man, shaped by tragedy on the streets of Orlando. In 1999, Slater's beloved older brother, Cedric Slater, was murdered in cold blood. The killer was a man named Charles Walker, who would later become notorious statewide. Cedric had practically raised Willie and their sister. The loss hit Willie like a sledgehammer.
My brother kind of raised me and my sister, but I can't bring them back, but it's going to definitely separate my family for the rest of my life, bro. Especially with, I'm in jail now.
Around the same time, Willie Slater Jr. found himself knee-deep in the game. In 1998, at just about 20 years old, he was allegedly involved in a violent home invasion, a crime that would soon turn into a life sentence behind bars. Slater was convicted and sent to prison in Florida, effectively losing his freedom at the same time he lost his brother. Whether by tragic coincidence or dark fate, 1999 saw Willie locked in a cell while his brother's killer, Charles Walker, was also sent to prison to serve a life term of his own for Cedric's murder. Despite the guilty verdict, Slater never stopped proclaiming his innocence. From his prison bunk, he pored over law books and penned motion after motion. His legal team fought tirelessly through appeals and even a federal habeas corpus petition. But every request for a new trial or evidentiary hearing was denied. The system had turned a deaf ear for years as Willie told anyone who'd listen that he was an innocent man, railroaded by the system. But in the brutal logic of the streets and the penitentiary, Willie knew that paper innocence was worth little without proof. He needed a miracle to escape the lifetime of concrete and steel that stretched before him. That miracle arrived in an unlikely form. A fellow inmate named Joseph Jenkins. Jenkins was a convicted murderer serving life in prison alongside Slater and Charles Walker. He came forward admitting his responsibility for the 1998 home invasion for which Slater had been punished. In court, Jenkins raised his hand, swore to tell the truth, and then calmly recounted the crime in gritty detail. He described breaking into a house on a hot Orlando night, a bandana pulled over his face and a gun in his hand. He told how 4 terrified occupants were corralled and tied up at gunpoint, details matching the original crime scene reports. In a steady voice, Jenkins confessed that he alone had invaded the home and terrorized the victims. Willie Slater wasn't there, he insisted, looking the judge in the eye. He had nothing to do with it. With Jenkins's sworn confession in hand, a court overturned Slater's conviction and set him free. After roughly a decade behind bars, Willie Slater Jr. walked out of prison a free man, officially exonerated by another man's confession. Slater's release was a moment of personal triumph shrouded in controversy. He immediately proclaimed his innocence to the media and even talked of suing the state for his wrongful conviction. But authorities and insiders cast doubt on Slater's clean hands. Investigators would later reveal that Jenkins's confession was not an act of selflessness. It was currency in a deadly bargain. Jenkins, already a lifer with nothing to lose, had effectively sold Willie his freedom, and Willie now owed Jenkins a favor of equal weight. It was a deal with the devil sealed in the shadows of prison. Jenkins had helped free Willie, and one day Willie would have to pay him back. Outside prison walls, Slater tried to rebuild his life. He was in his early 30s, ostensibly a wronged man starting fresh. He gave interviews claiming vindication and talking about holding the system accountable for locking him up. But whispers followed Willie wherever he went. His reputation was checkered. A 2011 letter to the court from his own wife painted him as a man who will stop at nothing, cares about no one, and believes he's above the law. That letter came after an ugly domestic incident where Willie had been arrested for beating his wife at the daycare center where she worked, an act of brutality that underscored his volatile nature. Though he served about a year in jail for the assault, his wife later recanted another abuse allegation, and Willie seemed to slip through the cracks of accountability once again. He also narrowly escaped prosecution for a 2012 armed burglary when the victim refused to testify. Time and again, Slater's knack for evading consequences earned him a sort of dark luck on the streets of Orlando, but that luck was about to run out. In the fall of 2013, news broke of an audacious escape that stunned Florida's law enforcement and made national headlines.
Two fugitives, Charles Walker and Joseph Jenkins, both serving decades-long sentences for murder and other crimes, released from prison after these fraudulent documents were filed in a court clerk's office, reducing their sentences. The paperwork had the forged signature of Judge Belvin Perry, who presided over the high-profile Casey Anthony trial.
It's very ingenious. It's a breakout without having to break out.
For a brief moment, Jenkins and Walker tasted freedom. But this was no simple accident. It was a coordinated scheme months in the making, involving accomplices both inside and outside the prison. The investigators quickly unraveled the plot and identified 4 conspirators behind the fraudulent releases. At the center was Naidid Nashadai, who had engineered the plan from behind bars using prison computers and legal mail to craft the convincing counterfeit documents. 2 other inmates, Terrence Goodman and Jeffrey Forbes, assisted in producing the paperwork and later helping the escapees evade capture. Charges against Naidid and Terrence Goodman were later dropped, with the state deciding not to pursue the matter any further. And then there was Willie Slater Jr., the man on the outside whose role was pivotal and deeply personal.
Former inmate Slater helped from outside the wall, ensuring that the forged documents were delivered to the Orange County Clerk's office.
When authorities realized what had happened, the detail was jaw-dropping. Willie Slater Jr., whose own brother Cedric was murdered by Charles Walker back in 1999, had helped that same killer escape from prison. It defied logic and morality. Why would a man free his sibling's murderer? The answer, law enforcement believed, lay in that debt Willie owed to Jenkins.
Agents say Jenkins had years earlier lied about Slater's involvement in a home invasion, helping him get out of jail.
He got out of prison, so essentially he owed that favor to Mr. Jenkins.
For 20 days, Jenkins and Walker roamed free in late September and early October 2013. They even brazenly registered as felons at the Orange County Jail, a move meant to cover their tracks by making their releases look legitimate. All the while, a statewide manhunt was underway. The escape was only discovered when the family of one of Jenkins' victims received an alert of his release.
Their release might have gone unnoticed by authorities if it wasn't for this woman who alerted them.
I almost passed out, really. I almost passed out.
Evangelina Kearse is the mother of Cedric Slater, who was murdered by fugitive Charles Walker. After his release, Kearse got this letter from the Department of Corrections, notifying her that Walker had gone free. Outraged, she showed the letter to prosecutors.
Eventually, U.S. Marshals and state agents cornered the fugitives at a Panama City motel. On October 19, 2013, Joseph Jenkins and Charles Walker were recaptured without violence, ending their brief taste of freedom. The fallout was massive. Florida's Department of Law Enforcement swiftly arrested Willie Slater Jr. and the other accomplices involved in the forgery scheme. Willie was taken into custody on October 28, 2013, picked up on outstanding warrants after a frantic, week-long search. He was charged with multiple felonies, including aiding an escape and forgery. The revelations forced the Florida Corrections Department to admit a glaring loophole in their procedures. No one had been verifying early release orders directly with judges. In response, the state moved quickly to tighten the system.
Today, the Department of Corrections announced that from now on, all orders for early release must be verified.
For Willie Slater Jr., however, the drama was far from over. In the chaotic days between Walker's escape and capture, Slater's long-suppressed anger at his brother's killer finally came to a head.
Charles got out of jail. My niece, Charles' daughter, called me. No, she said this: God let you out. God let my dad out. You should try to forgive him and leave it alone. I exploded, went to threatening my niece about what I would do to her father if I seen him because of what he done to my brother.
Knowing Walker was out on the streets, possibly armed and seeking revenge of his own, Willie grew increasingly agitated and protective of his family. He later claimed that in those tense days, Walker actually came back to Orlando.
Because this guy did come back to Orlando. He came back to Orange County. He actually came to my grandmother's house, you know what I'm saying, and by my father's house. So we all could have been dead.
Slater took to social media to vent his rage. On Facebook, he posted a fiery message directed at Charles Walker, a post that authorities would later characterize as a death threat. Orlando police say Willie began threatening to kill members of Walker's family in retaliation, essentially vowing to repay blood with blood. Slater, however, insists his words were misinterpreted, maintaining that he was just expressing frustration and fear, not a genuine murder plot.
Because I didn't threaten Charles. I never said on Facebook that I was looking for Charles. I never said I was going to murder Charles. I never said I was doing nothing to Jenkins, nobody. That is what they construed my words to be.
Regardless of intent, the threats were taken seriously. Already under suspicion for the escape plot, Willie now found himself accused of stalking and making death threats, compounding his legal troubles. On October 28, 2013, the same day FDLE finally caught up with him, Willie Slater Jr. was arrested in Orlando and booked into jail, ending his brief stint on the run. Willie was heated, asserting that instead of protecting his family from a murderer who filed falsified papers, authorities chose to punish him for speaking out.
Slater says the real injustice is that he's being prosecuted for raising concerns about a convicted killer who somehow filed falsified court papers authorizing his prison release.
So to use me for the scapegoat, I think the system is failing me for the third time. This is ridiculous.
Nevertheless, the law was not on Willie's side. The charges for assisting in the escape, forgery, and the alleged threats could have ensured Willie Slater Jr. would never taste freedom again. Ironically, by 2014, Willie was behind bars once more, the very place he had schemed so hard to leave just a few years before. Willie Slater Jr. didn't stay locked up for long. As the prison escape case unraveled in court, Joseph Jenkins pled no contest in 2016, while others struck deals. Whatever the case, by the late 2000s, Slater was free again, stepping back into the world for a second shot at life. For a while, it seemed Willie had escaped the cycle of the penitentiary and was embracing a new identity on the outside. But behind the bravado, there were signs that Willie Slater Jr. could never fully outrun the shadows of his past. Willie's newfound freedom was built on a fragile foundation of street debts and dangerous reputations. If his life was a book, as he styled it, the final chapter was yet to be written, and it would arrive with a vengeance. On that dark April morning in 2022, the final chapter of Willie Slater Jr.'s turbulent life was written in blood. The Orange County Sheriff's Office wasted little time investigating Slater's shooting. Within 2 weeks, they announced an arrest in his murder. Sean Robinson, a 22-year-old local man, was tracked down and charged with first-degree murder for Slater's killing, as well as attempted murder for shooting the surviving woman. The suspect was barely half Willie's age, a detail that underscores how the cycles of violence span generations. Only the streets know the motive behind the killing. What is known is that Slater was found shot to death outside a residence in the pre-dawn darkness. The woman who was wounded managed to get to a convenience store for help, a fortunate survivor of the carnage. The street-hardened survivor of so many close calls had finally met a fate he couldn't slip. Christmas, Florida, a place known mostly for quiet country living, had gained a grim new footnote, the site where Willie Slater Jr.'s luck finally ran out. Perhaps it was inevitable that, in the end, the streets collected their due from Willie Slater Jr.
Every nigga in this city, nigga, up under me, nigga, done heard Willie Slater in their house before. Fuck, nigga.